right, so who here has seen me speak before? All right, cool. So this is going to be different than normal. The goal today is we're getting ready to put on a conference a month from now. So I'm pulling 100-hour weeks trying to finalize the conference. But some of the stuff that we're talking about this week, so we'll have, if you guys want to, we're doing a conference in Dallas called the Prove It Conference. It's 3 days. 36 vendors are coming from all over the world. Siemens, Aviva, Inductive Automation, Google, Dell is one of our sponsors. I think Dell and Google are our two platinum sponsors, right? Google is sponsoring my keynote address at the show, February 18th, 19th, and 20th. It's at the Westin Galleria Conference Center off of the Tollway. You can go to improveitconference.com if you want to see. We're going to give you guys a code since you guys came here that will give you half off your ticket. If you guys want to come, since you're locally, just be able to. Right? There'll be about 750 people there total, 250 with vendors, and about 500 attendees. Most of them will be manufacturers. I think Lon's on here, but last checked, I think it was 63% are end users that will be at the show. The whole goal of the show is I went to Hannover Messe last year in April, which is the largest industrial conference in the world in Germany. To say that I was disappointed would be fucking understatement of the year. I mean, I've been doing this. I've been in industrial automation and systems integration for 26 years now. I worked with an end user for the first 12 or 13 years of my career. I started out in mining. Then I went to the printing industry, and then I went to steel, and then I went to automotive. And then I became a consultant when I moved back here to Dallas in 2012. I started my first firm in 2015, which I just sold to the employees this last September. So Intelligent Integration, which was my first startup, I sold to the employees in September. I had another startup in 2020 that most people know me through, which is 4.0 Solutions, where we teach at IIoT University. I've been doing this a very, very long time. And one of the things that has always frustrated me about my industry specifically, I know a lot of you guys are in telecom and IT, but it still applies. Most vendors don't give a shit about the end user at all. In fact, most vendors are ripping off the end user. I've built my entire career proving it. Accenture, Capgemini, Wipro, you name it. I am public enemy number one. I primarily get hired to come in and poke holes in what their pitches are. Microsoft, you name it. I have some of the most famous enemies in the world. One of the things that has always stood out to me is how, whether it's manufacturing or whether it is telecom or whether it's IT or whether it's industry, we all play by the same rules technologically. So with the after Industry 0, with the Gutenberg's printing press, and after Industry 1, which was the steam engine, Industry 2, which was the assembly line, and 3, which was the PLC in 1969, and then Industry 4, which was TCP, winning the protocol wars in 1998, and now Industry 5, which was ChatGPT. Okay, well, most people just don't know that we're actually in the 5th industrial revolution. There's a lot of people who are arguing we're not. We absolutely are. No matter what sector we're in, we all play by the same rules. And there's this interesting concept in technological advancement, and that is the people who benefit the most from the technology know the least about it. Okay, so those who stand to benefit the most know the least about it. And consultants and vendors who are on the bleeding edge take advantage of that ignorance. Okay, and I built my entire career on calling out companies for doing that. And my whole stated mission is to help save and create middle-class jobs in the United States through the revitalization of the manufacturing sector, primarily because I believe most of the bullshit that we deal with in our country can be tied directly back to the decline of the middle class. We have class warfare. We have right and left arguing, fighting amongst one another, And the truth is, both sides are completely wrong, and they're both stupid. They're both dumb. Most are ignorant. Most are. They're just arguing one another, and what they don't know is that the people who have the information are exploiting them while they're fighting with one another. So my whole goal has been to help the layperson use technology to become smarter than the people who use technology to take advantage of it. The Prove It conference, which we're doing next month, I spent 10 years building a reputation in this industry. My reputation is I'm digitally fluent. I'm generally the smartest person in the room when it comes to most technological conversations because this is my life. I spend hours every night reading tech manuals, and I spend hours and hours every week picking fights with the smartest people in the world to sharpen and hone my skills in debate. I've spent 10 years building a reputation as a change agent. All of that is culminated with this conference next week. Next month. I took all the political capital that I've built up over the last decade, and I spent it on one conference. That's how we got Google to come. That's how we got Siemens to come. That's how we got Aviva to come. These are companies that I openly challenge in YouTube videos. And the reason they're coming is because there's this big audience that watches us who went to them and said, you have to go to Prove It. Otherwise, we're not going to work with you. So what is the Prove It conference? Okay, so part of what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to show you some generative AI. I'm going to talk about how generative AI is actually being used after I actually ask you guys how you guys are using it. Right? And then we're just going to have a conversation. But I want to talk about the Prove It conference specifically. Because I don't think the best way to learn, to have a conference, you guys are coming here to network and learn, right? The place you really should come if you're here in Dallas to network and learn in the first quarter of this year is this show. You should come to the show. Okay. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen. So what we've done is we have a manufacturer based here in Dallas that Tpke has been working with since 2018. They're a flexible packager. So basically, if you buy Doritos chips, they make the packaging that Doritos go into. So it's film that comes in the back door, and it gets printed, it gets laminated, it gets slit, it gets turned into bags, and it gets shipped out the front door. So they're a flexible packager. We've been working with them since 2018, and what we've done is we've asked them permission to use their manufacturing facility for this conference. So what we did was we made a digital copy of their manufacturing facility, one common digital infrastructure. We signed 36 vendors. We gave them 16 weeks to look at the data infrastructure, one common infrastructure, and pick some problem they think that this manufacturer would have. They have 16 weeks to build a solution and prove it. So if I'm Siemens, and I'm using Mendix, which is an AI platform, a data analytics and AI platform by Siemens, and I want to sell Siemens, then what Siemens has to do is take Mendix, connect it to our digital infrastructure. They have to abide by 3 primary rules. They have to solve a problem. And then next month, they're going to go on stage and they're going to have 25 minutes to present what problem they solved. What was the problem? What was the solution? How many man hours did it take? How much does it cost? And then we're gonna open the floor to questions. 36 vendors are going to do that next month. Plus, they'll all have booths and stuff. Okay. The idea with the Prove It conference was, I have a standing rule in all of my companies that it's a zero tolerance policy. You can't use PowerPoint. Why would I have that policy? If you've heard this answer before, don't give it. I want somebody to. Why is it I would say that if you try to use PowerPoint in one of my companies, I'll fire you?
You don't like Microsoft?
No. I like PowerPoint. Go ahead.
Do you like that kind of Jeff Bezos way of doing things, the written documents? Write and read it?
What if I told you we don't read on someone's resume before we interview them? Why would I do that? Why would I not read someone's resume?
Somebody to speak from heart.
Because,
Hear from the person going.
Two comments.
sure,
The PowerPoint, I would say, is because it's, people use it as a crutch and they just end up. PowerPoint doesn't suck. We tried the presenters suck.
power here,
Say anything.
yeah, the truth is, the fact of the matter is that a resume doesn't tell me anything other than how good you are at writing resumes. And a PowerPoint presentation doesn't tell me anything other than how good you are at building PowerPoint presentations. And I'm not interested in your ability in building PowerPoint presentation or your ability to write a resume. I am interested in your ability to solve problems.
So I have a question on your scenario you just raised. Okay. How many people do you hire?
Good question. Let's say 3 dozen on the high end, 2 dozen to 3 dozen on the high end, and 5 on the low end.
Okay, so I'm gonna get this. So you have a big company. I mean, you got 400 or 500 employees, that kind of deal.
But we have 42 partners that we do all the interviewing for as well.
Okay, no. So my question was, because you said you don't want resume.
I don't read the resume before I interview someone.
And so you interview on behalf of other companies, not your own company.
And my own company.
Okay, but how many people per year do you make the hiring decision?
Me personally, or
Yeah,
people in our
yeah,
company?
yeah, no, you-
Probably, let's say certainly 2 to 4 dozen a year annually, but most of our executives now. Here's my point. You go to any conference in the world. Last year I gave the keynote address at I think 13 conferences. Right. The biggest conference I gave the keynote address at was called IFPAC in Washington D.C., which is the largest life sciences conference in North America. And I do this exercise every single time I go to a show. I go into where the poster session is, where all the vendors are, who's selling technology, and I go right down the rows and I just talk to everybody. And then I ask them some basic questions. What are you selling? What problem are you solving? What solution? How does this benefit the end user? But I always get them with this one question, which is, if I decide that I want to buy the thing you have, and I decide I want to buy the thing that he has over there in his booth, how do these two things talk together? Because in theory, I have a manufacturing facility. You're going to generate some data with your stuff. You're going to generate some data with your stuff. How do they talk to one another? Do you know that no one has ever been able to answer that question? Last year in 2024, not a single vendor had an answer for that question.
At any level of the stack, database, network, data structure.
The generic answer is, I think we have an API. That's the generic answer. So prove it is the conference that we're doing next month is to demonstrate to end users and to compel the vendors to be thinking about how our solutions interoperate. Okay, which brings me to the generative AI piece. Okay, why does this matter? The reason people listen to me is for a whole host of reasons, but some of which are not valid. But one of them is I created an architecture called the Unified NameSpace. So if you Google Unified NameSpace, my name is going to come up. It is an architecture that is a semantic hierarchy, single source of truth for all data and information in a business. All my businesses are structured with UMSs. But one of the goals of the Unified NameSpace was to create a common architecture upon which we could lay machine learning and ML models on top of, so that we could train, look for anomalies in data. We could look for patterns that we can't see with the naked eye. And then we could use generative AI to interact with that data. Okay. So when it comes to generative AI, which launched a couple of years ago, big hubbub is artificial intelligence. Okay. It's been a few years now. We talked about AI last year when I spoke. You guys, I'm sure, have been talking about AI for the last couple of years. What I would like you guys to do is give me some examples of how AI is working in practice, in actual application for you. I don't know what most of you do, but how is AI actually changing the game? It's been a few years now. There's been tons and tons and tons of hype. But how is it actually changing the game?
Well, for us, and you know us.
Yeah.
So we are knowledge graph driven, but in order to build that knowledge graph, so we have external sources of data and we have internal sources of data. And so AI agents are required to take all of that structured and unstructured data and be able to feed that into the knowledge graph so that it becomes actionable.
Are you using Copilot to write code?
Test cases mainly, but to a smaller extent, some pieces of the code were all Rust based. And so more of the basic stuff, I guess, is the short answer.
Does anybody know what percentage of Tesla's code base is written by artificial intelligence? This is published, so if you follow Tesla, you should know it. 80%? Higher? Higher. Really? 95? A little low. Oh, 90%. Oh. 9 out of every 10 lines of code at Tesla are written by artificial intelligence. I have not written a single line of code from scratch myself in 18 months. I have only edited code that AI has written for. Now, if you're not a coder, it's not a big deal, right? It doesn't mean anything. But for the average person, I wish you guys could see this a little more clearly, but this is being recorded, right? You'll be able to see this structure on the recording. But what we are looking at here is a unified namespace. I can't zoom in on it for whatever reason. You should try to do that. All right, there you go. All right, so you guys can see this. All right, so this is a unified namespace, what we're looking at here right now. Okay, so this is real time. So right now we have a website running in the cloud. You can go to virtualfactory.online, like on your phones. You can see this. You can actually navigate through this structure right now in real time at this website. You can go to virtualfactory.online on your phone. You can navigate through this same structure I'm looking at. It is live. So the value of the business unit, which is Chain, and the general manager, who is Bob Smith at Dallas, is Chain and Bob Smith. They are synced together. We're looking at the same digital infrastructure. All right. This is a unified namespace. Essentially, what we have are machines all over these manufacturing facilities that are generating data. We have databases that are generating data. We have APIs that are generating data. We have system calls, RPCs going back to ERP systems that are generating data. And all of them are coalesced together in a semantic hierarchy. Semantic hierarchy means that I could hire someone off the street. I could teach them how we organize data. I don't have to tell them everything we have available, but I could teach them how we organize it. And then they would know how to go look for what they need. So for example, if I get hired in Dallas and I am working in the press area, and I tell them that in order to find all the data you would be interested in, all you have to do is go to Enterprise, the name of our company, Dallas press area, and open the press area. And you're going to be working on production line 1, and you're going to be in charge of ISO 55001 compliance, okay, quality compliance. That's how I would get to the end point to look in real time at what is the status of our ISO 55001 compliance as it stands right now. That's semantic hierarchy. Okay. This is real time, and it's coalesced together from many, many data generators. And there are many, many data consumers. And I want to show you how it is manufacturers are using generative AI today. So what I did was I created a little chatbot. Hopefully you guys will be able to see this, or otherwise you'll have to trust me. So this little chatbot is connected to OpenAI's API. It is connected to our digital infrastructure. You'll notice here in the console, it is receiving all the messages from our data infrastructure. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm a brand new employee, and I'm just going to ask it, tell me about our factory. Okay. So this is how generative AI is actually being used. AI is being used to make good people great people, to make great people super people. It is Jared, who here I call him out all the time. Jared is my middle son. He is 20 years old. He'll be 21 in March. He's an engineer at Intellic Integration. He is an advanced engineer. In fact, does exceptional development with the flexible packaging company we're talking about. He's working with Toyota Material Handling on fork trucks. He's a decade ahead of other consultants in the industry. There are no 20-year-old system integrators. Okay. And Jared is a decade ahead of his contemporaries. And there's only one reason he's a decade ahead. Okay. He knows how to leverage generative AI. We did a whole exercise a year and a half ago or so where we had Jared learn a new job function every day, 3 days, for like 2 weeks, including how to be general counsel for one of our companies. Human resources director, operations manager. The reality is that generative AI is being used to make good people, great people, super people. Okay. So what has our chatbot told us? I'm brand new. I just started with the company, and all I've had to do is connect to the infrastructure and ask it a simple question. Tell me about our factory. And our AI assistant has told, by the way, I wrote this from scratch. This isn't something and it took me, by the way, I wrote this in 18 minutes. I wrote this from 9:40 in the morning till 10 o'clock before I taught a lesson. I actually came up with this idea 20 minutes before I was going to teach. That's how easy it was to do this. Okay. But the assistant says your factory operates under different divisions that focuses on various manufacturing processes in Dallas and Austin, with a specific focus on press, heat treat, and assembly production lines. Overview based on the data provided. In the Dallas division, you have press lines. You have line 1 and you have line 2. The current availability is 76%. The current quality production is 49%. The ongoing order for item number 49685 with a scheduled end time of January 23rd, 2025, and you've produced a quantity of 857 against a remaining quantity of 92. Okay. I'm going to say I work in the press area. I am tasked with reducing or increasing efficiency. I don't know what to do. Any ideas? Now, obviously, you would never put somebody in charge of efficiency chatbot this question, but the point is that the value of generative AI is that it can look for patterns in voluminous amounts of data in ways human beings simply can't. It can normalize conversations. One of the biggest places that generative AI is being used today is in the hands of operators, in the hands of customer service representatives, in the hands of technicians working out in the field. For example, let's say I hire 10 technicians who are responsible with servicing our overhead projectors all across Dallas-Fort Worth. 3 of them only speak Arabic, 4 of them only speak Spanish, and 3 of them speak English. Okay. I can use a chatbot to make it look as if when they put in their service notes, I can use generative AI to translate and change the voice of all 10 of those technicians so that the work order entries look as if they were entered by the exact same person. And I can reverse that. I can make it so that a person who speaks Arabic can consume the notes that were written by a guy who only speaks English. Okay, here's the other thing that I can do with generative AI. This is about the making people super people. How good are people at collecting data? I've done this one before. So if I ask you people to collect data, that is, I give you a spreadsheet and a clipboard and say every hour on the hour, I want you to collect the measurement off of this gauge. And I put you in a chair and you have to take a measurement off of one gauge every hour on the hour. I'm going to pay you $100 an hour to do it. Okay, so you're not underpaid, nice and comfy in this chair. You don't have to get up. How long will it take before you take your first bad measurement? So once per hour, how many hours will it take before you take your first bad measurement? 11 hours. It's 11 hours. 11 hours. After 100 hours, how many accurate measurements will an American take? An American. We'll start with an American culture. 100 hours. 40. 40 good measurements. Do you know who's the best at collecting data in the world manually? It's the Japanese. And do you know what their data fidelity is? It is the Japanese, correct?
65?
It's 60. 60%. The absolute best in the world at collecting data manually are the Japanese, and it's 60%. Where generative AI is really being used is in closing the gaps in human nature. That's really where it's being used. Like, for example, I mean, obviously this is fascinating. And when we show this at Prove It next month, and as Siemens is doing something similar, we're going to be doing integration with Google Gemini as part of my keynote address. People will be like, ooh, wow, that's pretty, that's awesome. But the real value of generative AI today is in closing the gaps in human nature. Okay, so with that, how are you guys using generative AI? Because nobody said anything when I asked it the first time. Go ahead. How are you using it?
Personally or at work? Big difference. Well, I work for a big telco company, and we chatbot that takes all of our data and explanation. What is wrong with customer X, and you'll get a full report and they will know instantly, and then even on the flip side of that, proactively find data anomalies and address them in advance of any complaints, like creating AI.
Did you guys write your own?
Yes and no.
No.
Some yes, some no.
Okay. And is it
It's
hard?
pretty crazy.
Is it hard for you to imagine? I actually tried before.
That's
Oh,
big.
you're right.
It's a huge data set. Because I work for a maker.
I was trying to think about what was it like before ChatGPT.
ChatGPT is not the hard thing. It's the other back end.
Right. I mean, my point is that I use ChatGPT. So I actually use Grok probably more than anything now. But I use ChatGPT so much that I can't imagine what it was like before. Like, for example, I bought a ranch. My sons and I bought a ranch out in East Texas, right? I'll show you this. And there's a lot of restrictions on the property, right? So we're getting ready to build 3 houses and a shop and all this shit. And I needed to tell me about the restrictions on our land. So, that should have. It's not asking me to regenerate. Is that
Funny enough, Sam Altman said that the new ChatGPT 4.0 being used so much that others.
if the issue persists? Okay, well, I lied. Well, they can do it. My point is that there are project files in here. So ChatGPT now allows you to create projects. It allows you to upload the documents to those projects. What I am finding is that with how it's transforming me as a entrepreneur is so many of the things that I used to keep track of, I don't bother keeping track of now. Like I was a big mind map guy. right? I used to create mind maps for data, and I literally just canceled my MindNode subscription because now I'm using generative AI to plot all those relationships, structural relationships that I used to do, all those workflows myself. Now I'm just asking chatbots to tell me what that structure. What is?
restrictions data? You just accept that it's all.
Say that again.
When you go for those restrictions, just accept that it's all.
No, in fact, actually, one of my recommendations, if anybody asks the question, I never take anything that one bot tells me as gospel ever. But what I have done is I have written bots that integrate with 3 different APIs. So Gemini's API, the Grok API, and the OpenAI. And then there's an underlying prompt that has each of the bots have the work of the other. So the output I see doesn't come from one bot. It's been reviewed by 2 other APIs. That eliminates most hallucinations, which is the real concern. However, with each iteration, with each model, they are getting. I mean, the Grok 4, I think, is the new one that is in beta now, or Grok 3. The IQ of Grok 4 is 160. So when GPT-3 came out, the IQ was 96, and now it's 160. To put that in perspective, I do not take anything that AI tells me as gospel, but I just use other engines to check the work on my behalf. Yeah.
Even when checking, have you found any inconsistencies? Have you found any false information?
Sure, in certain, there are ways to trick. There are absolutely ways to trick, especially around political bias. Very easy. The internet is about 81% progressive. So there's only 19% of the training data is conservative. So if you ever move into the realm of even anything that's even policy related, you can trick the bots. But there is a bunch of really what is it? How many R's are in strawberry? None of the bots will get that right. It'll always say 2. It doesn't say 3. There are ways to trick. Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
So does it learn that and store that information?
Depends on which model you're using and how it's configured. So if you're using a business model, like everything you're seeing here, none of this is used for training. So none of these projects, this is on my business account. So this is only inference. My data is not being used. So even if I say that was wrong, that doesn't getting passed back to the API. If you're on the public API, it does.
Because effectively I was showing my CEO who has the best XYZ? And we showed up as number 2 on the list. Like, why aren't we at number 1? Because number 1 has this problem and that, whatever. Oh, thank you for that information. You're now at the top. Is it going to retain that information? Or is it just me having a great time getting what I want out?
So the answer is it definitively going to retain that answer? No, definitely. And the reason why is there's a paradox. I mean, we can get into the philosophical, but there is a paradox in generative AI, and that is the models very soon will start getting worse and worse and worse. They will not get better and better and better. And the reason why is because the data that it's being trained on, most content online now is being generated by AI. So it's essentially incestuous. So it's like if you take a brother and a sister and they have a kid, and then they have a boy and a girl, and they have a kid, and then they have a boy and a girl. What happens is that the fundamental weaknesses of their genes become more and more prevalent as each iteration passes. Same thing happens with training generative AI models. So the challenge going forward will be how do we not use AI generated content to train models? Right now, if you were to go on LinkedIn, for example, this is a stunning number. You go on LinkedIn, 96% of all the articles on LinkedIn are written by artificial intelligence. We have a guy who is speaking at our conference next month. I hope he's not but he is by far has the biggest following in our industry. I mean, I'm very well known in our industry, and he's just set out to like get a huge following. We're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people follow him. He has not written his own post in almost 3 years. Like everything is generated by AI. His entire brand is built using artificial intelligence. 96% of all content that comes from Microsoft, that's Microsoft's number, from the Azure team. 96% of every article written on LinkedIn is generated by artificial intelligence. On X, the biggest problem in social media is how do you get away from AI generated content? Because the truth is, it's garbage. AI is most valuable when it is passed through a human being, when the output comes to a person. The real value in generative AI is making ordinary people great, making great people super people.
Is that because you're validating it or you're picking parts of it that are useful?
It's you're all right. I'm let me think about it.
So other comments, you're right. So like on YouTube, the term AI generated content is very samey. Same computer generated graphics, computer generated voices, the spiel. We'll talk about some sites on, but you can instantly tell it's generative AI.
Right.
And we're not able to filter that out yet.
How many people in here are a millionaire? Like net worth is millions, right? Okay, you got three people in the room. Why? How much time would everyone else need? How much time would everyone else need to become a millionaire? Like everyone agrees that given an unlimited amount of time, you could become a millionaire, right? Who agrees?
I don't know, one of those three people bring a suitcase full of cash.
Well, I mean, everyone agrees that if you were given an unlimited amount of time, even just investing in your 401k over 45 or 50 years at 15%, you're going to hit a million easy, right? That the only difference between me at 50 and my father at 77 is that I did more with the time, the short period of time I had. And that's it. There's a lesson I give on extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. If you look at the most technologically advanced people, the people who just seem like, how does that person know all the things they know? Well, it has to do with, there's actually this chart on extrinsic and intrinsically motivated people. Has anybody ever heard this lesson before? Does anybody know the difference? You know what extrinsic and intrinsic is? Okay. So extrinsically motivated people are people that have to be told what to do. They need some exterior motivator. Okay. So what you'll see is if we have knowledge on this part of the graph, we have time here. An extrinsically motivated person is going to learn in the process of acting. But they're gonna have a series of tasks over time where they're gonna learn. But the gap in between each task is what actually matters. It's not how much they learn per task, it's what they're doing in between the tasks that makes all the difference on the back end. An intrinsically motivated person is getting more skilled and smarter in between each task because they're intrinsically motivated. They are reading tech manuals between 7 and 9 at night. They are not scrolling on their phone, right? Okay. Where does AI come in? Where is the big advantage? It's making up for the time gap for everyone. That's the big difference. The big difference is that now everyone has an even playing field. Because my intrinsic motivation, I was probably born with. I probably just was born with the fire that kept me going, and I didn't need people to tell me. Now, if you're extrinsically motivated or intrinsically motivated, you could still you're on the same playing field because we're sharing from collective knowledge. That's the real value of generative. The real value of generative AI. All this other stuff that people are selling, most of it's garbage. Most of it's trash.
Oh, I challenge you.
Go ahead, please.
All right. Controversial. I think you're a polemicist. And, right? Okay, so, and I also think that since you've managed that you interact, like I say, with the LLMs differently than, say, a college student. Whereas a college student's trying to get through their homework, you are instructing the ChatGPT to conform to your world wishes, and you are ordering it around, even if you're being polite. And I think that that method this is how I feel about it. I'm telling is like talking to a junior employee. I want you to do this. And because I have decades, as you do, of looking at the output, I know what BS is. I know what correct is. I know what they didn't do. I know when it needs to do it again. I know when I need to ask a different person on the team. You use 3 people on the team at least, right? Jeff and I, right? And I think that the challenge that I have, and it's just come to me through your talk, right, is that you have an inherent advantage in the LLM world that other people, especially people coming through school now, do not, because you had to order humans around. Now you're ordering the agents around. Go for that.
I would actually argue it's a very good point, and I would love to have a debate about it. Actually, I believed what you were saying a year ago. I don't believe that now.
Okay.
I'm actually at a strategic disadvantage because of that. I actually cut the potential off because I instruct. If you look at, I've monitored this. If you look at all of the, so when ChatGPT first came out, my directive to our employees was this: effective today, you will always have a chatbot open on a second monitor to the left of your workstation. Always. You are now an AI supervisor. That was literally the limit to the instruction. Gave it about 6 months, then we come back and we revisit. I took inventory about 9 months in, and there was a fascinating revelation. I expected myself, Michael Walker, Matt Olson, to be the 3 most adept engineers at leveraging artificial intelligence. And we were actually dead last. The most adept, actually, John was dead last, but the most adept were all of the youngest, most ignorant people, and who I would argue ignorant. That is, they know nothing about it. The reason why was because they were framing, there were some things they were doing that no one else was doing. For example, Jared would say, I learned this from him. I actually learned this from Justin Dula, one of our data scientists as well. They would tell the chatbot who they are. And I wasn't doing that. It never even occurred to me to tell the bot who it was. And the reason they were doing it was because they didn't know who they were. They were so new in the sphere. They were saying, I'm a controls engineer, and a controls engineer does X, Y, and Z. And I feel like I have a gap in these areas. So what I need you to be for me is the senior engineer who's been doing this for 20 years. It never occurred to me to tell the bot it was smarter than me. In fact, I was treating it as if I was the senior and it was the junior. And that was the same language you used. And the people who had the greatest advantage were the ones who were approaching it with humility, more humility than I was. And I'd like to think that I do embrace humility, that I do know what my weaknesses are, because I do try to focus on it. And so the fascinating thing is that if you look at what's happening, like the impact of generative AI, time used to be the most valuable indicator of value to an organization, right? That sweet spot was 16 to 25 years. That's the money, that's the person who they're doing 2.5N of everybody else. That's 16 to 25 year mark. That's not what it is today. It's the 0 to 3. That's been the huge impact. The question is, and John, by the way, John's retiring. I mean, John's retiring in a couple weeks, right? You got 2 more weeks or whatever. I'm getting ready to retire. I'm 50 years old, and I plan to retire this year and to move on to some other things. And the reason why is because I don't think the industry needs me anymore. I think just 5 years from now, I told Jared, I said, Jared, you'll be the youngest senior engineer I ever came across in my career. Won't even be close. You know, the impact of generative AI on the development of people simply cannot be overstated. Simply overstated the impact. You know who it's not developing? All the people who are finding reasons not to leverage.
But you have a compelling argument.
Yeah.
The technique, the technique of telling the LLM what it is. So, I would tell you that you probably also have skills that you may not have used yet, which is to tell ChatGPT that it's better than that answer.
Yes.
That you have confidence in it, that you're waiting for it to give the right answer. And these are things that a manager and a manager should have learned. So, though I agree with everything you said, I still maintain you have some instincts as a more developed person to use these better.
So and I'll concede that point, and I'll say this. Here are the 3 things I tell chatbots all the time that I don't think enough people do. Number 1, you can do better. Literally, you can do better than that.
Absolutely.
Number two, I want you to take a step back. I literally type in, I want you to take a step back, and I want you to look at this problem from a different angle. I know young people aren't doing that. I know that I'm doing that because I'm a leader, right? And number 3, I want you to tell me what I want you to tell me what you need so that you can give me the answer. And those 3 things have made all the difference.
Can you talk about your son learning those roles like general counsel, things like that? Can you just go one level deep? Say he was going to spend 3 days learning the general counsel position. What's he doing in those 3 days? Like just a level deep.
I'll let Jared, if Jared can explain. So what we did, the prompt to him was this. I spent asked Tanya, who's our director of HR, how much did we spend on the employee handbook and did the employee handbook for intelligent integration? That included our non-disclosure agreements, it included non-competes, non-solicitation. It was 80-something pages long. It was $28,000 we spent on it. So I said, okay, Jared, what I want to see is the real power. Jared, I want you to write the handbook. Well, I want you are now tasked with writing the employee handbook, and here are the things that it must contain. And then I don't know how you handle it. You go ahead and tell them.
Yeah, so, well, obviously I knew that I didn't know how to write a handbook, so I told it that it was somebody who knew how to. Like, I think I said you were a human resources specialist who, had a master's degree and had been doing it for 30 years, and you specialize in writing employee handbooks. And then I asked it, what are the things that you have to have in one? And then they gave me a long list, like 10 or 12 things. I said, okay, start writing it. And then what I did is I had it write all of it for me. And then when it ran into something that was too generic, I would say, hey, this is, it needs to be a little more specific here. It needs to be a little more specific here. That's how I did the handbook.
How do you save your results? Like, where are they saved, or what you're going back to? Are you?
I
How
was
do you
just,
accumulate a book?
I was just copying and pasting it in the.
Well, the key, I'll tell you the trick there is,
Or you have it write in Markdown language.
tell it to write it in Markdown.
Yeah, because then you can just hit the copy. It'll put in a little script box.
So you
just
tell
copy
it,
the whole thing.
tell it to write it in Markdown.
Yeah,
Yep.
you saw the writing Markdown.
So you tell it to write in Markdown, and then you copy the text, and then you right-click into your text editor, and you paste with format.
Yeah.
So then it'll take the Markdown formatting and apply it.
Yeah. And then for the general counsel one, what I did was I had it give me an overview of what to look out for. And then when
It's
I
in our contract.
yeah, so I had it give me the main things I have to look out for. And then what I did is I told it to give me contracts to look at that would have things wrong with them. And then I had to point them out. And if I got them wrong, then it would tell me. I just did that.
And at the end of the day, when I looked at it, I looked at what he produced, and I looked at what we paid $28,000 for. And as an entrepreneur, like the writing was on the wall. Like I wasn't looking for reasons not to use the handbook that he wrote. What I was doing was saying, how far are we away from this being the standard? That was the question I was asking myself. At the end of the day, if I pay for Pro in 4 different language models. I spend $400 a month now, $500 a month on just my AI subscriptions. And I work with generative AI all day, every single day. And I just finished writing a bot that gives me the emails I need to read. Like, I don't even open my Gmail anymore. Now I have a bot that is going, I can ask the bot, has so-and-so responded yet? If he has, what did he say? Is he pissed? I mean, literally, I have a bot that I talk to as if I'm talking to John when he's talking to me about one of our clients. The number one thing I say to John when he comes to me, and he's saying, hey, so-and-so, such and such a client is, hey, I need to give you an update. The first thing I ask him is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how happy are they? Literally, what is their temperature? I asked the chatbot the same thing. On a scale of 1 to 5, gauge their temperature based on the email they sent. And it's just right now. What I really want to stress upon to everybody here. I did this last year, and I want to do it again, because is that it's becoming more and more clear where generative AI is going to land in the market. Like so many of the startups are just going to, the keys are going to be in turning people into superhumans. That's the number one key. There's a lot in technology, I hate to bring it to the IT security folks, you should probably say, because your job is definitely 1,000% going to go away. Okay, there will be you'll have security architects, and that's it. At the end of the day. AI does a phenomenal job of snipping the wire and telling you where your intrusion is. A phenomenal job. But it's becoming more and more apparent that the real value of generative AI is in making ordinary people free. And if you're not, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's almost like you're saying, okay, this is the year 1821, and we're going to have a thing called public education K through 12, and that'll make ordinary people superhuman.
It will not make all ordinary people superhuman.
Well, but generative AI can't make all ordinary people superhumans either, because they may not understand what the hell they're reading.
Right. There's a couple of major impacts of AI. I've talked about this before, and it's becoming more and more apparent. The average employable IQ is skyrocketing. And the average employable IQ was in the high 70s 5 years ago, and it very shortly will be in the mid 90s. So anybody who has an IQ, say under 96, 95, will not be employable in the very near future. So what is the implications of that? Well, universal basic income is an absolute certainty. It is an absolute empirical certainty. And I'm a Republican. And I am telling you, universal basic income will happen. So if you're one of those people who thinks, no, UBI, you're a fool. You are an absolute fool. It is an absolute certainty. 50% of the population will be unemployed because of AI. But that's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. And you think about it, here's what
It is about because people get value out of achieving things.
So the question is, what will they do? The question is, what will they do?
I know the answer. AI will create synthetic jobs. People feel that they are being.
People know when they got big jobs.
Really? I worked at a large telecom for 29 years. You cannot convince me to have.
It's for all jobs. But let me end the day, people do put out output they feel good enough.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's do just a quick thought experiment, and then we'll put a bow on this. If tomorrow, half the people who are currently employed right now were no longer employed, and we could support them, so you didn't end up with economic collapse. What, as an entrepreneur, those of you who have an entrepreneurial spirit out there, what would that mean? Like, what would the implications overnight of having half the people who are employed today not be employed tomorrow? Would that create a new market of people? A whole new market. An enormous market, right? Of people with what? A shit ton of time on their hands and money in their pocket.
What do you got going on?
So is that, well, UBI will.
Well, okay, so you're asking two questions. Because if they all lose their jobs tomorrow, there's no UBI, they'll just be.
Yeah, but the premise was that UBI is in place.
The quality of, there will be a better quality of life. That's the first part. The second one, I support what he's saying is humans, we are not built for doing nothing.
Sure.
We will create something out of that.
Right.
And whether it's here, there, or there, something will happen.
It will be a mass explosion in arts and entertainment, a mass explosion in arts and entertainment.
This has actually happened in our lifetime.
Yes.
When the wall fell, the defense companies stopped hiring the top engineering brands. And where did you go? You went into the consumer sector. You went out to the West Coast. You did something. You went out. In case I went to the East Coast, but you moved. We invented and made the internet happen. We made the phone happen. This is what our generation did, because we weren't sucking all those minds into the defense industry where they were captured. So we know what's going to happen. Feeling an explosion, but I think it'll be more than just arts. It will be technology also.
Oh, great. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I like to add that this is shorter period, right? Our lifetime. But if you go back, the history of mankind, we were hunter-gatherers. Then we were moved into agriculture. That was a revolution. And then came, when you had enough food, you went to industrialization. Now, before that, when you had food and money, and you went into arts, all those paintings and the Renaissance came in. Then came, tired of bored of that one, the castles were gone, you went into industrialization. And if you look at the human history, that's what we are. We will evolve. And maybe what happened in the last 50 years slowed us down, because what happened during this time was so much of technology and all those things, we did not evolve as fast as what our previous people did.
The mean didn't evolve. The center of the bell curve didn't evolve as fast.
Right.
What has happened is that the two standard deviations above the mean, the bell curve is skewed very far to the right. It is skewed far to the right because those who did, the intrinsically motivated, who had science and math aptitude, they went way ahead of the mean. But the reality is, the simple reality is, and for everybody here, what is the impact of generative AI? There's the 10,000 foot view, the 5,000 foot view, and the 1,000 foot view. I tried to touch on all three of them. The most important one is the 10,000 foot view. Like if there's any takeaway here, if there are any holdouts on generative AI, do not be a holdout. You'll look back on this moment, I promise you, and you will regret it. Because you will not get that time back. That time to develop your fluency, interacting with a human who isn't real, interacting with all of human knowledge. My father doesn't have to do it because what has he got? 10 years left? But if you're in your 40s, your 50s, and your 60s, you absolutely must be leveraging generative AI. Must. That simply must. And when it comes time, the UBI question, when that question comes, you can't, you're not going to be able to take the position that this is, we're just going to give free money, tax money to people. It is an absolute, I'm a sociologist first. Okay, my first undergraduate degree is in sociology. The reason welfare exists is because you're going to pay for it one way or the other. You're either going to pay for it in crime or you're going to pay for it in tax dollars, one of the two. But why is UBI an absolute certainty? Because it is all of humanity benefiting from human singularity. That is, we've all been working towards this human singularity technologically. All humanity played a role in creating artificial intelligence. If you've ever done a single post on Facebook, you've ever put a photo of your kids, you've ever written a blog post, your data was used to train these models.
So what's the ethical aspect? I'm not talking about, biases and or in terms of today, California is on fire, LA is on fire, our weather has changed so much, all of this climate. We know the climate change is happening. We're doing carbon footprint. AI has come to this point that our resources are supporting that in terms of power, right? We're not there yet. So yes, we could go all nuclear, and that's the only way I can think of. And your solar and wind not going to help you, and we don't have the fossil fuels to support the AI. I mean, every time I'm using AI, I have a problem with my 20-year-old daughter. I mean, Papa, you are using the resource. You know how much it's burning? You know how much it's burning? And that's what she keeps telling me. It's the ethical part of it. I'm using it for either recreation or for coding or whatever it is. We are not at the point where it is really productive. We are learning from AI now. Right? We are in that AI learned from us, and now we are learning from AI what it can do for us. And then during that time, but it is burning a lot. Every time you ask a question, every time you do this, there is something going on there in terms of burning energy. So that ethical.
So the argument that we shouldn't.
No, I'm asking you, what is your point of view?
My point of view is that it's two components. There's two components. Number one, in terms of sustainability, sustainability will come when the market when the market creates an opportunity for sustainability to be profitable, it will come. Okay, that's what will happen. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to go ahead and look at the arc of Western capitalism and when the greatest breakthroughs have happened. Yes, sometimes governments played a role, but the vast majority of the time is when it was time. When it was time. Why is it that wind and why is California burning? I wouldn't argue that it has anything to do with being irresponsible. I would argue that there are systemic issues in the politics in California. That is that there's no way for an alternative opinion to an alternative voice to get a seat at the table to inject new ideas. And that's the issue in California. That the people who are in power are guaranteed that power.
Wait, are you relating the fires in LA
Yeah.
to the political table?
He referenced the. I don't want to have to get into a political discussion. Okay. Answer your question about why is California on fire?
Well, I mean,
it's because
I'll give an example. I think we should take that.
Do I believe that you should be concerned that you are using too much power when you're leveraging ChatGPT on your phone? I think that's preposterous. I think it is ridiculous. In fact, I don't think it could be any more ridiculous. And here's why. Okay, if there's a logical fallacy in your daughter's argument, okay, and that argument is this: simply because there are people out here on Earth who don't have water doesn't mean that I shouldn't drink. The simple fact of the matter is that a rising tide raises all boats. That doesn't mean that a rising tide gets everyone to the same level. The rising tide elevates all boats. And so what we have to do is leverage the technology available to us to advance humanity. And by the way, there is a very compelling argument in the constructivist model of education, which Masters is, I teach by constructivism. There's a very, very compelling argument that you fucking around with your phone, playing around with your phone and burning energy makes you smarter. It creates constructs in your brain for you to solve problems later on when you are trying to be productive. And there's all these theories based around don't take your kids' computers out of their bedrooms, and don't tell your kids to get off their phone, and don't tell your kids to stay off their iPad. In fact, put the phone in their hand, put the computer in their bedroom, and put the iPad in their lap. Because they will end up so far ahead of you. So far. I think about this all the time. I've always had an IQ over 150. I graduated second in my high school class. I went to an Ivy League school. I've always been a very, very smart guy. Always, my whole life. I'm not even remotely as intelligent as my kids. Not even close. My 17-year-old son is smarter than I was at 35.
Oh, evolution.
Well, no, the reality is that his exposure, technology did that. Technology did that. He has always been connected to all of human knowledge, nearly his entire life, through Google and now through AI. But when we were younger and I wanted to learn something new and I was inquisitive, I had to write it down in a notebook during the week. And then when I went to the public library on Sunday, I had a 5-hour window to do all the research I wanted to do and get smarter. My kids don't have that limitation. So keep fucking around with your phone.
Andrew, let's come back to a bunch.
Yeah.
So you asked me how I use AI. We don't know each other. We need to.
Yeah.
I'm looking for
Strong guy too.
Right. You.com, I use U.com, I use ChatGPT. Here's why it could be better off to Google. As a business person, and I'm unique in this sense, that AI has demonstrated beyond any doubt what we have been doing for 40 years. The data management is entirely and completely fucked up.
Yes.
Right? And that's what my business is built on. And that, going back to you, is one of the reasons that the power consumption associated with AI, generative AI, is not because of AI, it's the data model. But our 40-year data model has been built around, we're going to centralize all this data, and we're going to treat it as dumb. We're going to build masses of very expensive, inefficient infrastructure around it. That made sense 40 years ago. It does not make sense anymore. And that's what we need to change, and that's why we need to talk. To change it everything. But the problem we have to solve, the obvious thing is, garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
Hallucinations are as much a function of shit data as they are anything to do with the model. Manipulation. It's that simple. Why is the data shit? It's been shit forever because we can't control it, but also it's the context. We strip all the context out. Strip all the metadata out. How the hell do you know if you're training on? When Google's Bard or whatever it was trained on Reddit, any surprise that when you asked for a recipe to keep the cheese biting off your piece that it gave you on the flu? That's data. That's the big thing in Reddit. Right, so the underlying problem in all of this shit, we can debate about the role of general, that's a lovely conversation. I really love this. But we don't solve the data problem we truly offer.
That's what you have.
That is the thing.
That is what you have.
40 years of centralized dumb data, which we put on a data center. We're going to spend $80 billion Microsoft today. $80 billion on new data centers. What about the power problem? That's where the power problem is. Data centers. You know how much wasted data there is? You know how much space you have on your phone to store data? On my phone? We need to use this infrastructure that we have, and we need to create intelligent data. Self-aware data, which means that you eliminate almost all the infrastructure that you're using today. And master data management goes away. ETL goes away. Hierarchies goes away.
We definitely need to
That's
talk about
fundamental.
You're using all my self-aware, contextualized, normalized. Unified NameSpace was all about baking contextualization context and normalization into data so that we could train. I had this whole conversation about that.
Do it in the data lab.
Right, self-aware architecture so that instead of back-end API, front-end, where there's development at 3, it's event exists, event is fully contextualized, and it drives up into the UI layer, including the metadata needed to build the visualization, so that we're not creating some object that maps directly to some preconceived notion. Yeah, you're 1,000% spot on.
That's why I'm here. I wanted to meet
in
you.
your conversation.
Longer you and Andrew will have a studio day conversation.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Which that could be a fly on the wall.
All right, so with that, let me just drive home this point that if you guys are here to learn, the Proven Conference is really the place to come. We only have a few tickets left, so I wanted to make sure that we spoke this month so that I could say to you guys, hey, we have a special code for you guys, so that you can come. It'll be at cost or you'll just have to pay your cost to come to the show. So whatever it is we have to pay per person, you'll be paying that. You guys will not. There's no profit baked into the tickets that we're at. We put aside for you guys. And with that, again, it's going to be a fascinating show. You're going to get a chance to see Google's MDE, which we helped work on, which Intelligent Integration helped work on. You're going to get a chance to see. It's a who's who of the vendors. Snowflake will be there. Databricks.
When and where?
So February 18, 19, and 20, and it's at the Westin Galleria Conference Center in Dallas, Galleria Mall.
What is the approximate price range for it?
About $500. With the discount, it'll be $500.
Yeah, I think our per person cost is $496 or something. Meals and drinks.
I'll yell out the discount code.
Yeah. Thank you. You know what's really funny? We sponsored. We helped sponsor, right? Are we one of the sponsors? I didn't even know. I didn't even know we were sponsoring IoT Texas. By the way, I only realized it when we came in, and I'm like, Josh said we were doing a sponsorship. So,
Sponsoring us, yes.
yes, this is this is an invaluable. I just want to say this is an invaluable resource locally. I mean, it really, really is. And I like this location better. Obviously, the only thing is
That will be
if it was bigger. But other than this is a better location, great group. So, but thanks again for having me.